George Steinbrenner was arguably the most impactful owner to come through baseball. He built the Yankees into the financial behemoth they are today, the most valuable team in baseball, valued at $6 billion, according to our estimates. He led them to 7 World Series, countless marquee free agent signings. Steinbrenner never hesitated to bring stars to the Bronx. From Reggie Jackson to Alex Rodriguez, he always pushed to keep the Yankees competitive, and his win-at-all-cost mentality could be detrimental at times, especially how he was perceived in the public eye, but ultimately he put a winner on the field. Many times on Seinfeld, we caught a glimpse of what was supposed to be the back of George Steinbrenner's head. He was parodied on the popular sitcom, and it was an enjoyable exaggeration that reflected how he was this larger-than-life persona. I remember the first time the character appears is when George Costanza is following the opposite of his instincts and interviewing for a job with the Yankees, and he runs into Steinbrenner and ends up insulting him, and the line is something like,
"Hire this man."
And I think that's just representative of how kind of temperamental Steinbrenner was and how fiery he was and just how much of a larger-than-life persona he had become. He was passionate, but he was also erratic. You know, you look back at some of the things that happened during his tenure. He hired and refired manager Billy Martin several times. He went through a number of publicists during the early years of his tenure. And also, he had some more complicated issues in his regime. He was kicked out of baseball twice, the first for making illegal campaign contributions, which I should say that he was later pardoned for, but also he later made shady business dealings in the 90s that resulted in another breakaway from the game, well, more so his day-to-day management of the team. When George passed away in 2010, he was survived by his wife and his 4 children, Hal, Hank, Jessica, and Jennifer. His wife later passed away, but coincidentally, he died in a year where there was no estate tax. So if he had passed away months later and the new rate of 55% had kicked in, which it did in January of 2011, his heirs could have been on the hook for something like $600 million. In the time since George's death, the Yankees have grown tremendously in value from $1.6 billion in 2010 to $6 billion today. That's been the primary driver of growth for this family's fortune, and we estimate that each of George's kids got an equal share. Hank, unfortunately, George's eldest son, died in 2020, so it's unclear what happened to his share of the fortune, but we estimate that his 3 surviving kids, Hal, Jessica, and Jennifer, based on their controlling interest in Yankee Global Enterprises, which is the holding company of the Yankees, makes them all billionaires. Under the umbrella of Yankee Global Enterprises, the holding company that controls the Yankees, there are several other businesses the Steinbrenner family has pieces of. One is the Yes Network, which is the network that George actually came together with the Nets and created to broadcast Yankee games regionally. There's also New York City FC, the Major League Soccer club that plays in Yankee Stadium, as well as Legends Hospitality, a joint venture that Steinbrenner came together with Dallas Cowboys owner Jerry Jones to form in 2008. And then more recently, Yankee Global Enterprises took part in Redbird Capital's acquisition of Italian soccer club AC Milan for a reported $1.28 billion. In terms of how the heirs compare to George's oversight of the Yankees, it's definitely a more quiet and tranquil regime. Hal is the guy who runs the team now, and he's not necessarily the outspoken person that his father was, or even that his older brother Hank was. But that doesn't mean they've lost their reputation for spending. In 2017, they traded for Giancarlo Stanton, the star outfielder who had signed a 13-year, $325 million contract with the Marlins. 2 years later, they went out and shelled out another $324 million, signing Garrett Cole to a 9-year deal, the most ever for a major league pitcher. Success has kind of lagged, though, for the franchise. They're in the midst of a World Series drought over the last 13 years. The last time they won was 2009, when George was still alive, and they haven't been back to the Fall Classic since. So you could say that the Yankees haven't achieved what they've wanted to in that time, but also they've been competitive on the field nearly every year. They were back in it, winning 99 games this year. So it depends how you define success, but the Yankee brand demands success. And not reaching the World Series, especially over the last few years, is something that definitely weighs heavily on the franchise.